The end of September brings cooler air to the Texas coast. The tourists are gone, the beaches are quiet, and the nights grow long. Some campers go looking for peace, others find something else waiting for them in the dark. Tonight, 3 true fall beach camping stories. Real places, real encounters, told exactly as they happened. Story 1. The Fog at Matagorda Bay Nature Park. I went to Matagorda Bay Nature Park the last weekend of September because the crowds were gone and the wind finally felt like it remembered how to be cool. The beach wasn't empty, but it was closed. A couple of tents tucked into the dunes, and a ranger truck that rolled by once at dusk and didn't come back. I set my one-person tent near a low ridge, staked the fly hard because the forecast said gusts, and watched the water turn from tin to black. The tide line was a mess of grass and crab shells. Every few minutes something clicked in the rack, little claws working. It should have been peaceful. It was for a while. I ate from a camp stove, turned my phone to airplane to save battery, and tried to listen to nothing. The only thing out there louder than the surf was my own breath. Around 11, a fog started coming in off the water. I've seen fog creep in before, but this moved like it had intention, like it followed the curve of the shoreline and chose where it wanted to land. It didn't drift, it arrived. 1 minute, the moon showed its path on the breakers. The next, the beam got swallowed and the beach turned into a gray room with a ceiling just above my headlamp. I zipped the tent and lay down, figured it would burn off or push inland, but a sound woke me that didn't fit the ocean's rhythm. It was a splash. Heavy. Close. Not the constant shush. This was a single step in shallow water, then another, then silence. I told myself it was a big bird, or a deer pushing across the flats behind the dunes. I told myself a lot of things. I rolled to my side and checked the time. 12:37. The tent fabric ticked with sand. A shape moved just outside the vestibule, the kind of darker than dark that only makes sense when it shifts. I held my breath. Whatever it was didn't bump the tent. It paced. I could feel it, by the way. The fog swallowed sound, steps finding the wet part of the sand where prints hold. It circled once and stopped at the zip. I didn't say anything. I barely blinked. I had pepper spray in my shoe, but no good way to use it from a sleeping bag. The zipper didn't move, the fog did, and brought a smell in with it, not like the salt I'd gotten used to earlier. This was stale, like a cooler that had been shut too long, with rainwater in it. I could taste it on my tongue. The steps went away. Not far. A splash again, but not out to sea, parallel to shore. I waited for the fog to thin. It didn't. I waited for my headlamp battery to die. It didn't either. Around 2, I couldn't stand not knowing, so I wriggled out, kept low, and lifted the fly edge with 2 fingers. My light hit nothing but gray. The beam went about 6 feet, then ended in cotton. I kept the cone narrow and aimed at the ground. The sand right outside the vestibule was patterned with tiny crab prints and 3 human ones. Bear. Full heel, all 5 toes, the ball pressed deep. They came from the waterline toward my tent and stopped at the zipper. There were no prints leading away. I told myself the wind erased the returns. I told myself the tide did it. The problem with those lies is the wind was coming from the north, and the prints were shielded by the dune, and the tide was going out. I stood very slowly and swung the light toward the surf. The fog was thickest there, a wall that breathed. In the center of it, maybe 10 yards off, a darker shape stood where the wash thinned. I could make out a shoulder, the line of a head. It didn't face me, it faced downshore, like it was listening to something I couldn't hear. I went back into the tent and didn't sleep. I kept the spray in my hand until my palm ached. At first light, the fog thinned to strips and then to nothing. The prints remained where they had been, a perfect set of 3 that ended at my door. I followed them with my eyes to the waterline. There were more prints there, scattered, overlapping, like whoever made them didn't walk so much as hesitate in every direction at once. From that mess, one line continued straight into the bay and vanished under a thin, mirrored sheet of water. None came back. I packed faster than I've ever packed. The ranger truck rolled by again around 9, and I flagged him, like an idiot, waving both arms. I told him I'd heard someone in the night. He said calmly that I wasn't the first person to complain about late-season prowlers, that the fog brings noises from miles away, that the flats play tricks. He never got out. He never looked at the prints. On the drive out, the roadway cut between marsh and surf. Where the fog had been thickest, the reeds lay bowed, as if a lot of weight had passed through in one narrow direction. I kept telling myself it was hogs. I told myself that all the way to the highway, and then I stopped telling it because a lie, repeated enough times, starts to sound like prayer, and nothing out there was listening to me except the water.
Story 2. The Whispering Wind at Sea. Rim State Park. Sea Rim is quieter than most places on the coast. You hear the marsh before you see the beach. Frogs ticking like metronomes. Something big exhaling in the cattails. The wind cutting reed against reed. I went there with my girlfriend to camp one night at the end of September. We picked a site with marsh to our backs and the Gulf in front so we could pretend we were the only people left on the planet. When the sun went down, the wind didn't. It pushed the guy lines like rubber bands and carried little shells up the beach to rattle at our ankles. We've made a small fire, ate badly cooked hot dogs, and talked about nothing. Every horror story I've ever heard happens in the woods or in a basement. It felt like being this exposed would make us safer. The whisper started after midnight. It came in the wind, not through it. Like it wasn't writing on top, so much as woven inside, thin and sibilant. Words so close to words that my brain kept trying to force them into sentences. I thought it was my girlfriend at first, mumbling, but she'd already gone into the tent and zipped up. I stood alone by the coals and listened. Go home. Don't look back. Or not those exact phrases, but that meaning. That urgency. I turned my head like a radio antenna, trying to find the angle where the noise was loudest. It was always behind me, in the reeds. I walked toward the marsh a few steps, then a few more, until the ground softened under my sandals and my feet started to sink. The whisper got clearer. It didn't sound like one voice. It sounded like many people trying to tell the same secret faster than the wind could carry it. I took another step, and something moved in the water just ahead. A low, smooth displacement, like a body pushing through shallow. I backed up, hands out, and the whisper broke into a hiss. So hot it felt like anger. I couldn't make out any one word now. It all came at once. I went into the tent and told my girlfriend we should move the cooler into the car because of raccoons. We did. We both heard something in the reeds while we walked. The kind of sound that's almost a footstep. Almost not. We locked the doors, set the keys where we could reach them, and lay down fully dressed. Sometime later, the whole tent pressed in. A slow flex, like something leaned on it with a palm. You could hear the poles complain. We didn't say anything, but I felt her fingers hook around my wrist and stay there. The pressure shifted, slid along the fabric toward the zipper, and stopped. The wind said something that my body understood more than my brain did. Every hair rose. I counted to 100, then to 100 again, and the pressure eased. The wind took the rest of the night. At dawn, we found drag marks in the sand that didn't belong to the tide. They started at the edge of the reeds behind our site, where the mud still held water. 2 parallel lines, about as far apart as a pair of hands if you pulled something heavy by its straps. The tracks crossed the sand, went around our tent, and stopped where the cooler had been before we moved it. From there, the lines turned and went back into the marsh, deeper, as if whatever pulled was lighter on the return. We followed them to the grass and lost them. The reeds made a sound when the wind moved through that I can't describe without using words like whisper and warning. We packed, we made ourselves laugh about the whole thing, and we got in the car. The road out runs beside canals. As we drove, every so often, the water's surface broke in a V that wasn't wind, then smooth like a mouth, closing over a story. We stopped at the boardwalk because it felt wrong not to. The planks were gray and warm in the early sun. Looking out over the marsh, you can forget you're a mile from the Gulf and think you're standing at the edge of a field. The reeds all leaned the same way. You could see paths through them, narrow where things used to walk, and wide where they still do. The wind came up, and for a second, just a second, it didn't hit my ears so much as the bones of my face. And a word landed there like a hand. Go. I don't know if it meant go home or go now or go back. We did the first two. We did not do the third. I've heard people say that place is beautiful in October. I believe them. Beauty and warning aren't opposites. Sometimes they arrive together, braided so tightly you can't pull them apart without losing both.
Story 3. The Vanishing Camp at Mustang Island State Park. Mustang Island at the end of September feels abandoned. The trash cans are empty, the restrooms echo, and the sand holds more tire tracks than footprint. I arrived just before dark on Friday, staked my tent quickly, and walked the tide line once. 3 sites down, a small green tent glowed faintly from a lantern inside. I lifted a hand as I passed. No one waved back. The wind kept steady through evening. When it finally dropped, the silence felt too heavy. I lay in my bag with the fly rolled up so I could see the sky and that distant lantern. It went dark around midnight. Mine did too. Sometime later, I woke to the sound every camper knows. A zipper, not mine, the other tent's. Low voices followed, muffled, more than one person. I rolled over, not listening for words. Then another zipper and the sound of footsteps moving across sand toward the water. After that, nothing. No surf, no wind, no insects, just silence. I pushed up on an elbow. Where the tent had been, the beach looked wrong, flat, empty, dark. I told myself it was the angle, or that I was more asleep than awake, but the longer I stared, the clearer it was. The lantern was gone, and so was the tent. I walked over with my headlamp low. There was no tent, no poles, no lines, only a shallow depression shaped like a tent footprint. I did small circles with the light and found 3 sets of tracks leading to the water, one deep as if carrying weight. One, small and widely spaced, like running. The third dragged into a long trough that ended at the foam. From there, nothing. The Gulf erased the rest. I went back to my site and zipped the tent fully. I kept my shoes by the door, headlamp around my neck, and a knife in my hand I had no idea how to use. I lay like that until gray light thinned the dark. Morning didn't change what I saw. The tent-shaped hollow was still there, softening at the edges. A single stake lay half-buried, with a fluorescent cord tied to it. I tugged it free. The hole filled instantly, as if the beach was eager to hide it. Around 9, a ranger truck rolled by. I flagged him and explained what I'd seen. A tent, voices, zippers, then no tent, only tracks that ended in the water. He looked where I pointed. The tide had already smoothed everything clean, he said. People sometimes pack up at night to beat traffic or storms. I nodded, though there had been no storm, no traffic driving out. I turned at the paddling trail, pulled off a hatchback, sat there, the same one I'd noticed near the green tent. Its tires wore a lip of wet sand, as if a wave had licked them before retreating. No people, no gear, just a car, alone. At home, I unpacked my gear and kept thinking about the hollow and the sand and the prints. That only went one way. I thought about how zippers sound small until you hear them in the dark when they don't belong. I still camp, but I don't roll my fly up anymore. I don't need the stars badly enough to see what else the night might take. Fall is a season of change. Shorter days, longer nights, and colder winds off the Gulf. For the campers in these stories, the coast gave them more than they bargained for. If you ever find yourself pitching a tent on an empty stretch of beach at the end of September, pay attention to the fog, the wind, and the silence. Because out there, once the light is gone, the ocean isn't the only thing watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you dare.